The following episode does not constitute medical advice and is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It's like GPS for your life, the Sky Vibe Show. Ow! That's what it does. That's what we do when there's a full moon. But my question is, can you manifest with any moon? It is Judi.Diamond along with professional astrologist Thomas Miller. Hello, Thomas.
And I've got a pretty good coyote howl that I've kind of become popular for in my podcast.
Kind of why I was trying to do it. I sounded nothing like you.
You know, you got to, but anyway, it's fun.
That's only a good one.
That's only for a full moon, though. We just, right now we're in between. We're headed toward a new moon in a little bit here.
I wanted to ask you, the reason I ask you is I'm on TikTok a lot, as you know, and there's all kinds of things you can do that you learn, okay, you're going to light this candle on this moon. The first moon, you're going to do this. It's like, can you really manifest with the moon?
I've paid a lot of attention to this over the years. Here's what I think about it. There are books out there called Manifesting from or with the Moon.
You narrated one, Steve Forrester.
Well,
about the moon,
I did.
right?
Yeah, Steve did a book. I've done 6 books. He's one of the premier astrologers in the world today, and I've been honored to do 6 audiobooks for Steve. The last one I did was called Book of the Moon, and he gives you a whole 6 chapters, I believe, at the beginning of the book about just characteristics of the moon. It's the best education about the moon that you could ever imagine. And he does talk in there about a manifesting technique. But I've really tracked this because I don't like woo-woo stuff that's like, oh, this, I like real, practical, tangible, workable stuff.
That's the Scorpio in you.
Yes, it is. And filter out the riff. It's like, okay, it might sound good, but what's really real? Now, what we know about the moon that's really real is it changes frequently. The tides change frequently. The moon changes zodiacal signs frequently, about every 2 to 3 days. It's in a different sign. So there's this changeability about it, right? It gets bigger, then it gets full, and then it gets smaller, and then it goes away for a couple of days, and then it gets bigger. So it's always changing. So with that, what I think that the moon represents when we think about bringing or drawing things into our lives is the in and out flow or rhythm of the natural processes of our life.
So let's say somebody wants to have a baby. They want to get pregnant. And the female maybe goes by her cycle. Would that include the moon?
Wow, what a great question. In fact, that's like almost the ultimate manifesting question, right? So look,
yes.
I want to be careful. I want to answer this with a technique in astrology, but I also want to be careful because I know that there are probably couples that are trying to get pregnant, and maybe they've had a difficult time, and I don't want to, give a false hope, because there are other medical issues that certainly could be at play this is broad stroke. But also, it's something that I really think if you want to apply this to yourself, you really should seek a professional astrologer's help. And if you contact me on Fun Astrology and you have this question, I'd be happy to book an appointment with you and work this through. It's not a complicated thing to do. But basically, what you do is you take the distance between the sun and the moon in your chart, your natal chart. This is a woman now. By degrees. So let's just say the moon and the sun are 60 degrees apart in somebody's chart. Okay, just throwing a number down. Every month that the moon and the sun are 60 degrees apart, wherever they are in the sky, just at that point in the month, and every month it covers every degree, right? Because we go from new moon to new moon or full moon to full moon. It's going to cover all of it. And your aspect is in there somewhere. When it hits your number of degrees apart in your chart, plus one day on either side, unless there are other issues, that woman is fertile during those days. That's
huge, Thomas. That's huge.
It is huge.
And you've seen it actually come to fruition.
Oh, yeah. In fact, the teacher that I'm doing another podcast with called Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast, and he describes, Robert Glasscock describes this technique in that podcast. It's one of the early episodes. Or if you just go to the podcast and search maybe fertility.
We'll try and put it in the show
fertility.
Notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
that it's in there, the full description. But again, even if you knew it, it's one of those things that's so critical, I'd want another set of eyes on it.
Yes.
But basically, whatever distance your sun and moon are apart from each other, applied to the next month ahead, gives you the window plus or minus 1 day.
This, to me, is a no-brainer. And the reason I say it's a no-brainer is because you talk about the moon and the sun, the planet cycles, and when we call it our cycle, it just seems appropriate. It seems like it would fit.
Well, and you brought up this question, which I just thought was so great. And we were just talking about the moon being the symbol of cycles. So I think that there's this rhythm of this pulse of the universe. And when you talk about manifesting, it's not so much a particular, when the moon is at home, for example, in Cancer, that manifesting is just like the gestation period. You have to have some kind of conception. You have to have growth. You have to water it. You have to groom it. You have to grow it up.
And you have to believe it. That's the biggest thing. If you don't believe it and truly believe it, you can't manifest it.
So I think that there's this over-exaggeration on, let's just pull things up out of the sky.
I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to manifest it. It doesn't work quite like that.
We know that's not realistic. So what is realistic? What is realistic is there are better times to conceive, just like that question. There are better times to plant the seeds. There are better times to harvest the seeds. Of course, you know more when that is because you see the fruit. But I think that the main thing for us to do is to stay in the rhythm of the universe. That's what the moon shows us. It's that drumbeat, that pulse, that ever-changing, flowing, wonderful, beautiful, growing, expanding, contracting, resting for a few days, going invisible. Don't we all want to do that a couple of days a month, like turn the phone off, and the new moon period where it's in the dark and we go shadowy and then we come back out and then we're shining out a couple of weeks later. If we can
and
get
then we go howl?
Yeah, howl.
And do it. If you feel like howling, man, do it.
I think that's the better way to look at the moon as far as manifesting. Now, there is one other thing that I will say, though, and this is what Steve Forrest brings up in his book, and I think this is great, that the moon can be this catalyst for us to not only plant the seeds, but also to be in that rhythm of what is the best time to do this. There's one time every couple of days when the moon changes signs that you want to avoid, and that's called the void of course moon. And we talked about this in a previous episode, but I'll just describe that when the moon moves through a sign, let's say that it's in Gemini. We're talking about Gemini. Let's say the moon is in Gemini. The next sign is Cancer. The moon has gone all the way through Gemini. It's toward the very end. There are 30 degrees in the sky, 30 geometric degrees in the sky in every sign. So the moon has moved through most of the 30. It's getting ready to scoot on out and go to the next sign. There's a point there, and it varies every time from sign to sign, where it does not encounter or aspect geometrically another planet in the sky before it changes signs. So there's nothing else in its path to square or sextile or trine or opposition, all those astrological terms, that it is in this dead space, if you will.
So you're basically in the dark.
That's the time to not try to manifest something. That is a little break. And I love the rhythm of this because we get these breaks in the sky, from the sky. Mercury retrograde, that happens every about 88 days, let's say, upper 80s. And it lasts for 3 weeks. Every about 3 months, the universe is telling us to kind of take a tech break, like throttle back. I know none of us could make a living if we weren't on our phone and our computer and all that, but do what you can to throttle back every about almost 3 months. There's a rhythm.
Taking a break, you could learn about astrology by listening to the show and kicking back. That's a break.
And there's this little lunar break that we get, this void of course, that every couple of days, and I know it's you again, it's like, oh, well, sorry, I can't do that meeting right now because the moon is void of course. It's like, yeah.
People would think you're a spaz to use that word
Sorry,
again.
Billy, you got to do this show on your own this morning because the moon is void of course, and I'm going to be sleeping in. I mean, that would be like, let's talk about your contract real quick.
Yeah.
That is now void of course.
I've already used Mercury in retrograde way too many times.
Yeah, you
when
can't.
I'm late.
No, don't try this one at all. So, but you see what I'm saying is there's also a rhythm of rest. So resting is just as important as go, go, go. And that's been long forgotten in our society. But we do need to take chill pills every now and then. And the cycle has that built into it every couple of days. It's beautiful.
I love that. Well, Thomas, that has been I've been schooled, and I know I'm not alone in the questions on there. This is fantastic.
Yeah, it's wonderful. That maternity technique is just absolutely incredible.
And again, I would say talk to Thomas Miller. He would be happy to help you out. Funastrology.com. He's got Old Soul, New Soul, Fun Astrology podcast. Of course, this one you better subscribe to, or I'll sick the howling coyote on you.
Let's say goodbye this way. 3,
okay.
2, 1.
Ow!
We're going to have to get iHeart to take that gate off your microphone.
It was good.